Today's Sunday sermon is going to address the issue of weak men in society and how it impacts women and children, and really how it impacts our day-to-day lives all over. This video is in response to a comment that was posted on the wall it was like a secondary comment. This young lady wrote, "Men today, not all, of course, you have to put that in because they get in their feelings, are not what they should be. A lot of them are lost. It's like a role reversal. They are weak." And this guy comes back, Axel, and asks, "Why can't men be weak?" And I stared at this, and I've had this on my computer for weeks. I did a screenshot. While I thought of all the reasons why men can't be weak, and the weakness of men is causing 99.9% of the world's problems. Don't believe me? I went to the experts, which are the women that come to YouTube, and I asked them for their input on what they perceive to be weakness in men. And I will be sharing some of their answers with you as we go through this video. But what I want to begin first is by defining what weakness is, because I think, the slang version of it is one thing, but I like to, get into dictionary definitions to make sure that we're all on the same page. To be weak means many things, but we're going to focus on primarily a couple of these definitions. Lacking in bodily strength or healthy vigor. That's going to be under one of our categories of weak. Not having much political strength, governing power, or authority. Lacking in potency, meaning impotent, ineffectual, inadequate. Lacking in creative force or effectiveness. And lacking in logical soundness. And then liable to yield, break, or collapse under pressure or strain. Fragile, frail. So all of those things denote weakness, and those are at the core of what we're going to be talking about, plus a lot more, because I have divided the categories that I think men are weak in into 5 areas. There's mental weakness, there's physical weakness, which I just went over, social weakness, emotional weakness, and weakness of character. So all of the responses that I've collected from women, as well as my own assessment of weak behavior, will be divided into those 5 categories. I'm sure there's probably others, but these are the 5 that I thought of and that I think cover the pretty wide range of behaviors and attitudes that we will come across. Now, unfortunately, because of gender inequality has been around since time began, pretty much since all of recorded history. Men have always been deemed to be, to have less flaws, and to be stronger, and to be somewhat superior to females. In that respect, they were put in the role of being protectors of families, of tribes, of villages, of kingdoms, of countries. Okay, men were the ones in charge of protecting those areas and everyone in those areas. But the part about them being superior, that's kind of up for debate. But you got to look at who decided that. That was men. So it's like, that's kind of like the fox guarding the hen house. They're going to make a decision that's, of course, got to be in their own best interest. But along with that decision to be viewed as the strongest and to be superior, there are certain expectations that went along with that. Cultures around the world have manhood rituals and manhood rites that young boys have to pass and go through in order to earn the title of man, in order to be viewed as being mature enough to take on a wife and the responsibilities of a family, and to have the responsibilities of other men in that village, in that country, in that tribe, that kind of thing. So you just because you get older, that doesn't make you a man in those societies. And I think, unfortunately, that's not what we have here. We don't have any kind of real standards for manhood anymore. We used to, but I don't know, something happened and things have changed. But for women and for children, the need for a man and to have certain characteristics and certain behaviors and attitudes displayed by that man have not changed. They haven't changed. Men's ego needs to be viewed as superior and to be a protector and to be, someone who is looked up to, respected, and admired, also have not changed. So when you have those needs, base needs in both males and females that have not changed, why are men so weak? What is it that they think they can get if they're not meeting the standards of manhood? And why do they still want to be treated like one and get all the respect of one and get all the deference of one and have all the power of one when you don't deserve it? You haven't earned it. You don't meet the minimum qualifications of manhood. We'll be going over some of these in a minute. So essentially what happens, though, when men become weak, it forces women to step in and fill in the gaps, right? Because somebody's got to do it. Somebody has to do it. You got a household that needs to be run, children that needs to be taken care of, bills that need to be paid. If the guy who was set up to be head of the household or the leader of the family shirks his responsibility, somebody has to fill in that gap. Normally, that would be the mom or the wife or, the woman in the relationship. And what happens though is that relationship then gets out of balance because that woman is doing both jobs. She's playing both roles. And there's, a yin and a yang. Every situation, every relationship, everything on this planet is supposed to be in balance. And when you have an unbalanced relationship where it puts too much pressure on the woman to fill in the gaps left by the man's lack of accountability and lack of responsibility, it makes her have to take on the role of man. Okay, the traditional role of man. She has to do that because you're not doing it. Okay, and it needs to get done. So what's happening is then you have all these guys saying, well, especially they love to say this about black women. Oh, they're so manly. They're so manly. They don't have any femininity. And you have all these channels promoting all this stuff about, women being feminine and this and that. You can only be feminine when you are in a relationship with a man who is in touch with his masculinity. The two play off each other. The two are like yin and yang. If you have some weak guy like this, and we have a lot of examples of weakness, and I think a lot of guys are going to have their feelings hurt because they don't understand. They didn't have any concept that women viewed them as weak when they do and say and behave these ways. You're in for an eye opener. And so ultimately, these women end up being a lot tougher and a lot more aggressive and a lot more strong than they would normally have to be if they had their man doing, playing his part, playing his role. But they don't do that. So, it becomes kind of an issue. Now, one thing I found online is this guy named Henry Rollins. And Henry wrote, he had like an article, I don't know, I took a couple of quotes from it. And you see him there. He's an older guy now, but he's very fit. He's always worked out since he was a young guy, and was in the service and everything. I mean, and look at him. He just looks rugged. He looks like a man. So he says, I've never really met a truly strong person who didn't have self-respect. I think a lot of inwardly and outwardly directed contempt passes itself off as self-respect. The idea of raising yourself by stepping on someone's shoulders instead of doing it yourself. Strength reveals itself through character. Muscle mass does not always equal strength. Strength is kindness and sensitivity. Strength is understanding that your power is both physical and emotional, that it comes from the body, the heart, and the mind. And he also had something else to say about young men these days and how they are weaker than their fathers, how they don't know how to fix anything. They don't know how to to repair anything. They don't know how to build anything. If you ask them to get over there and create a shed or do something, they're all in their feelings and they don't know how to do anything. He says that he feels like, the most rudimentary tasks of manual labor, they're incapable of it. And he thought that kind of guy had a short lifespan, that would fade out as times change, but it did not, of course, as we know now. And he says that they like to have a victim mentality and that they can get power and sympathy all at once by playing the victim. And he says the only response to this is to confront the crybabies until they man up or shut up. No more yielding to the utter nonsense of social media shame campaigns, hand-wringing deans of students, or idiotic politically correct corporate press releases. There are real victims out there, and real victims need actual men to stand in their defense. So that's what I'm saying. If the men aren't going to be there, the men aren't going to do it, that forces the women to stand in that position. So let us get started talking about some of these issues here. I want to first address mental weakness. Let's talk about mental weakness first. What is a person who's mentally weak? Well, they tend to be someone who doesn't really have their own mind. They're easily duped. They're easily swayed, easily convinced to do something that they know they shouldn't be doing. They could start off with one opinion, and then by listening to someone else and their opinion, they get swayed very easily. I mean, the person may not even have a logical reason for it, but you start going along with it. An example: a woman was telling me how she wanted to get married, right? And she meets this dude, and he's like, "Oh, marriage is just a piece of paper. It don't mean nothing anyway." Blah 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 blah. So at the end of his tirade, 10 minutes later, she wasn't sure she wanted to get married. Okay, mental weakness. And the same thing happens with guys. You know that you're supposed to get up and go to work, but you go hang out with your boys. You know that there's certain obligations that you have to do. You don't do them, and you just let yourself feel pitiful and weak. And you have a pity party. You don't get off your ass and do anything. Those are people who are mentally weak. And the women had a lot to say about that. Guys who don't stand up for themselves, or his spouse when she gets disrespected. He can be easily pushed around. The term backbone was used often. And that these guys are mentally weak because they fail to raise and discipline their children. They blame their problems on women. They take their anger out on women. They abuse women. And they have a herd mentality. That's another one. What I used to call the pack mentality. They get in with a group of guys, and they know that the guys are ready to do something wrong that they shouldn't do. But instead of separating themselves from that group, it's more important to them to be seen by this group as being one of the boys. So they go along with the nonsense. That's how a lot of sons, your sons, will end up in prison because they was hanging around with some ratchet friends instead of bringing their butts home. They want to be accepted by those friends, so they do criminal activities, assault women, all kind of stuff, so that they can get the big ups of this crowd that they're hanging with. That's more important to them than doing the right thing. If you have a son like that, he's mentally weak. I don't know what else to tell you. There's no way around that. The guys who say, well, y'all won't let a man lead. You too hard. I need you to hold me down. We need to build together. I need a woman that's going to help me build. Mentally weak. Not to mention lazy. And, mentally weak men also will try to tell women that, they don't need a man. You look like you don't need a man. Well, is your ego that fragile that you think just because a woman has a good job and is, paying her rent and doing her mortgage or whatever, that means she doesn't need love and support? I don't know. That's just very weak. And one lady says, well, weak guys never speak for themselves. They always play broken telephone. They lack the ability to apologize, and you'll give you the silent treatment. Yeah, because they in their feelings. That's the main thing about these guys that are mentally weak. They are also emotionally weak. The two go hand in hand. But these are the things. I hope you're reading them as they go across the screen of the women's opinions about mental weakness. And this is only some. Of course, there were so many I couldn't put everybody's on. So let's move on and talk about physical weakness. Now, in addition to in addition to, what guys look like, their muscle mass and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they don't have that either. But it's also part of that is being afraid to go to the doctor. So they don't go. And so they have, physical as well as mental health issues that need to be addressed. And they don't get medical checkups and they don't get dental checkups. So they have like the grill of life, cavities, bad breath, all kind of stuff going on in their mouth, and they don't floss. They don't really, take care of themselves the way that they should. And that taking care includes putting proper food into your body, proper liquid, staying hydrated with nutritional beverages, not sugary soda pops and liquor, and exercising regularly. So that these guys end up 30 years old with the belly of life, a receding hairline from poor nutrition, high blood pressure, 28, 29 years old. They're already having some ED problems at 35. All kinds of stuff goes on when men don't take care of themselves and are physically weak in that direction. And David French, who's a writer at the National Review, he's also an attorney. He says young American males are losing touch with a critical element of true masculinity. If you're the average millennial male, your dad is stronger than you are. In fact, you may not be stronger than the average millennial female. You're exactly the kind of person who in generations past had your milk money confiscated every day, who got swirlied in the middle school bathroom. The very idea of manual labor is alien to you, and even if you were asked to help, say build a back porch, or the task would exhaust you to the point of uselessness. Welcome to the new post-masculine reality. And that's what he had to say about it. I was pretty horrified, but as I said, that's something I've noticed. A lot of young guys, they don't know how to even change a tire. They don't know anything, can't fix nothing in the house. You got to always call a repairman, even for something as simple as, fixing something on the toilet. I mean, you could look on YouTube and figure out how to do that if nobody taught you. That's what I did. So, if I could do it, then why can't you? So it becomes very interesting. So yeah, that's what I got to say about the physical weakness. But they could do something with themselves to look more masculine. Not have them little doughy SpongeBob looking bodies. That's not cute. It's not sexy. It doesn't look masculine. Okay. Then let's move on and talk about social weakness. Now, under this category, people are like, well, what's that? I don't know, something I made up. But I felt like it matched a whole bunch of things because of the fact that social life is hard. That's what I'm gonna say. We got a lot of pressures on us. There's a lot of things that we struggle with daily. Now this COVID thing is hitting. There's 15 million, unemployed people in the country now, and a lot of people lost hours. So even though they still have a job, they're not making as much money as they were because they're only part time now. Stuff like that. So everybody is going through it at this point. So what you got though is if you have a guy who has social weakness, he not only has a lot of these traits I'm going to be rattling off in a little bit, poor social skills, he also lacks the ability to overcome these kinds of challenges in the face of adversity. So socially, he is seen as a weak man, a failure, a loser. Okay, you can't see him through the eyes of anyone outside of your relationship as being successful. Since most men's, their job, they're tied to their job, and their ego is tied to, the amount of money they make and what they do for work. A guy who's underemployed or not employed at all, as you can see, is going to be known as a failure socially. He's not going to get any kind of credit. He can't do anything. He can't even really go out and stuff because he doesn't have any cash. So, there's a lot to being viewed as a person of purpose and determination and what we call grit and perseverance. If you don't have those things, if people don't see that about you, then you become less attractive. And women, chimed in on that too. It's like, the man that's not motivated is weak. A man with no goals is a turnoff. A man who needs a woman's help to make money or succeed is weak. A men who whine and beg are weak. Men who take women's money are weak. Men who need constant attention and validation and don't put any effort into anything are weak. And another thing about those people with the socials, well, let me just go over my list. I have a list here of poor guys that have poor social skills. So if you see your guy on this list, or guys listening to this, you see yourself here, you need to work on this because these are social weaknesses that you have. These guys usually have very poor social skills. They're awkward. embarrassing to have around your friends and family. You don't want to bring them to any company function because you never know what's going to come out of their mouth or what they're going to do to embarrass you and make you just look stupid. So they're very rude. They snatch things from other people. They snatch things out of people's hands, or they take things that don't belong to them without asking. That's a big one. They talk over and interrupt other people. They just too busy to listen to what you have to say. They have very poor table manners, and their conversational habits are such that they often say inappropriate things to the situation or to the person that they're talking to. They lack vocabulary and enunciation. They speak very poorly. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing, a mumbly mouth. They'll throw a fit like a toddler when they don't get their way, and they refuse to say please and thank you. They just, grunt at you or something. He may manage his finances poorly. He's always borrowing or he's bouncing checks. He's always short. You don't know what he does with his money. It's a mystery. He owes back child support. He cannot hold down a job, and that's usually due to his behavior on the job. He shows up late, or he just doesn't show up at all, misses too many days. Insubordination, sexual harassment of female staff. I could go on and on. I've seen it all at jobs. And so these guys will tend to lose job after job after job after job. They're unwilling to notice anybody else's emotional response other than his own. So he could be looking right at you, hurting every feeling that you had. He's just like clueless, oblivious. They talk really loudly for no reason, especially in areas or places where your voices should be lowered. And they just want it's like they just want all this attention. They have to have attention. It's just the most interesting thing. They often leave a mess for other people to clean up, all over the house. They just think you just there, mama lives there, or maid or something. They lie and manipulate. They say cruel things to other people, very hurtful things, and they really just don't care how their actions impact other people. These are all things that indicate that the man that you are with has poor social skills and therefore is very, he has social weaknesses. That's just the bottom line. That's pretty much it for that one. So let's move on and let's talk about emotional weakness. We got emotional and character weakness still to do. Let me add one more thing to social weakness too, that I want to make sure I clear up. On the perseverance thing, you do want to keep trying. You don't want to just not a guy that just gets knocked down and so that he never wants to get back up. You don't want that kind of man. You want one that's going to try 3, 4, 5 times. Now, at a certain point, there comes the point, okay, maybe you need to try something different. Maybe keep trying that thing is not working, so you need to change your goal slightly, but you still need to keep trying. And my favorite phrase is by W.C. Fields. It's like, if at first you don't succeed, try again, then give up. No sense in being a damn fool about it. And that's one of my favorite quotes. As you see, I have it memorized because it's just so meaningful to me. You don't want to give up prematurely. That's basically what he's saying. Okay. So let's talk about emotional weaknesses. Now, people with emotional weaknesses often they're just always in their feelings. It's just really hard to have a conversation with them, to resolve any conflict with them. A lot of them will try to manipulate people with tears because they don't want to really deal with what you're talking about. And a lot of them feel bad about themselves. And I think people that are emotionally weak, that always feel like somebody's attacking them and somebody's, being out to get them and doesn't like them and all this kind of stuff, is always defensive and all that. Those are people that have emotional weaknesses, and at the root of that is some extremely low self-esteem and almost non-existent self-confidence. So instead of turning that energy into themselves and developing themselves to be stronger people emotionally, they instead lash out at you. Now, when you have emotional weakness, what you usually are lacking is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence refers to the ability to identify not only your emotions, but those of other people as well as to manage your emotions and other people's emotions. There's basically 3 skills under which you have a strong emotional intelligence, and that is, number 1, the awareness or the ability to identify what your emotions are, what you're feeling. Can you be specific about what that is? Number two, the ability to harness those emotions and apply them to situations that, will think and help you analyze and solve problems. It's okay. So you're just like, I'm in this relationship and I feel sad most of the time and I feel upset and I cry a lot. Okay, now you understand that's what you feel. What you going to do with those feelings? What are you going to do about those feelings? That's a problem and you need to solve it. That's just one example. Because you could be angry, it could be something, going on at work that you're angry about, someone, violating your rights or whatever. You're feeling these things, but you have to be able to identify them and do something about them. And then point number three, the ability to manage your emotions, which includes regulating your own when necessary, like don't fly off the handle and go crazy, and helping other people to do the same thing, talk them off the ledge, get them to understand that, there's another way to resolve this, that kind of thing. Okay, those are people that have strong levels of emotional intelligence, and that works out really well. Okay, so emotionally weak men, though, what do? These women have a lot to say about it. They feel like these are men who are insecure. They're in competition. They're not accountable. They don't have any goals. Can't control his emotions. These are guys who, they fly off the handle. They always are getting in fights. The guys who, in the heat of the moment want to kill somebody. A lot of men in prison right now because of that, because they couldn't control their emotions in a critical moment. They're very emotionally unstable. They tend to be indecisive. They don't have any confidence. They cannot establish boundaries with family and friends, and they're always a follower. Always a follower. They have a need to control or tear down women. They whine. They need constant validation. We talked about that before. They have very low standards and low value for their life. They're what I call the basic men that think, just because they have a job and a car and have an apartment, that they are, quote, a good man. It just makes you just basic. So these are some of the things, again, the slides are there. Feel free at any time during these videos, if you want to read the slides, to turn the audio off and just, read the slides as they go by, because these women had a lot to say. Now let's talk about the last area, which was the most that we got the most responses in, and that's character weaknesses. And this really is kind of an umbrella. If I was only going to choose one area of weakness that most men have, it would be this one. But I put it last because it was, to me, the most important. Now, your character. What is your character? Your character is everything that you are. It's your thoughts, your actions, and the feelings that you portray over a period of time. So someone who has good character is a guy who believes that he should always do his best to make sound decisions and good choices in that moment. Okay, because you're going to be faced with all kinds of temptations and things that you really shouldn't be doing, and opportunities to do, what my grandmother used to call the devil's work. But you have to prove over time that you always make the sound decision, even if it's not the easy thing to do. You want to always portray yourself, if you have good character, as someone who is honest and respectful and fair and who's responsible. And just because you make a mistake, though, that doesn't mean that you don't have good character. But what do you do about the mistake that you made? That's the important part. Do you take responsibility for the mistake that you made? Do you apologize for the mistake that you made? Do you pay restitution for the mistake that you made? Do you take care of people's medical bills for the mistake that you made? Do you reimburse people for the property that you damaged for the mistake that you made? What do you do? That's what a person of sound character does. They don't just try to dip out and leave the person with a problem. You step up and you take care of things, because that's what a person who is accountable and who has strong, good character does. That's what you do. So the ladies, had a lot to say about that. And the men who, what am I trying to say here? I'm losing my train of thought. The men who don't have strong character displayed a lot of really very negative traits. As you can see here, the ladies had a lot to say. They don't take responsibility. They don't recognize or try to correct their flaws. They try to really act like they don't have any. They don't have a relationship with his children. They're so indecisive they can't lead their way out of a paper bag. They're flaky, so you can't depend on them. They will pretend like they have your back, but then they fall off and leave you hanging. And they're just this not accountable at all. Everything that happens that they have a hand in is someone else's fault. Someone else is responsible for it. It's not them. Then these are the same guys that prey on women and children in every way imaginable. Okay. They're very weak because they don't want to do that to another man. Another man will bust them in the face. So they go and they get, small, vulnerable people that can't fight them back as easily, especially kids. And so, when you have somebody like that, how could you think that a man who behaves like that and who treats children and women that way has a solid character? How could you be in a relationship with someone who exhibits these patterns of behavior? This is an ain't shit dude. He's nothing. He's nothing he's like barely even human. So you got to, really think about these kind of traits. How does this guy treat his women and his children? And I think that's a big one, because a lot of you will deal with these baby daddy types who come at you with this excuse. Well, she won't let me see my kids. That's a lie. That's a lie. If you know anything about the family court system, and if you don't know anything, then read up on it so you're not so clueless when they come at you with that game. And, any man who wants to have visitation or even have custody of his kids can go to court and get it. The courts, you prove that you got a stable situation. You got a bedroom for the kids when they come over. You steadily employed. Your house is clean. You got a refrigerator stocked full of food. Because they might send a social worker to check it all out before they say yes. But, this is possible. So girlfriends, come on now. You got a guy who's telling you some stuff like that. He's not seeing his kids. He's not taking care of them. He doesn't talk to them on the phone. He don't do nothing with them. That's his flesh and blood. And he just turns his back on them like that. And you want to still date him? You want to marry him? He's an ain't shit dude. So don't be surprised when he treats you the same way. That's what I'm saying. Someone's character is who they are. You can't separate yourself from your innate being. And that is what your character is. It's everything that you do, everything that you say, and how you conduct yourself in the world. So you got a guy who's, a liar, and he dipping and dodging responsibility. And he just doesn't take care of business. What are you doing? Why are you with a guy like that? So these are the things that I hope that young man can understand, why it is mandatory that men not be weak. There's nothing positive about being a weak man. It's nothing that you should be ashamed of yourself if you have these traits and you are considered weak by women. And then you wonder why no woman wants you. This is why. Okay, we want somebody, even if no matter how accomplished we are, we want a man that we can respect and admire. We admire his hustle. We respect the way he moves. And if you got a guy that you can't, and you always embarrassed by what he does and what he says and how he moves and shakes, you're weak in her eyes. She may love you, but you're not going to get that kind of respect that you're looking for because you're weak. And one thing that the world does not need is any weak men. So if that's you, figure out what you need to do about it. And ladies, if you got a weak man in your life and you're not really sure how to approach it, I'm going to tell you this one thing. Do not step in and take over his responsibility and still call yourself in a relationship with him. There have to be repercussions for his behavior. And his repercussions should be that he loses you and he loses the relationship. Otherwise, he's just going to keep doing what he's doing, treating you like a donkey, and you just going to be the pack mule doing all the work. Is that what you want? Because if you're going to be doing all the work, what do you need him for? Think about it. And go for a man that has good character. Go for a man who's not weak. Go for a man who is responsible, accountable, and who's got his mind right. And then you'll have a very happy relationship. If you have any doubts, please check out the 3-series video recently up called What's in It for Me? I will link them in the show description below to make sure it's just easy for you to find. But that video series expands on this as what kind of things you should be looking for in your man to make sure that you have a happy relationship with him. I'm not saying it's going to be forever, but while you are together, it'll be a great experience for you, because he's that dude. Okay, so this is Deb Cooper with the Sunday Sermon, and I'll talk to you guys soon. I say I'll see you on Tuesday. If you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscription button and hit the like on your way out. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.